Welcome to the Wayne Public Library's virtual author chat. My guest today is Heather E. Andrews. Heather grew up in the Pacific Northwest, but eventually left the sandy beaches of Camino Island for the majestic Adirondack Mountains on the East Coast. After years of pursuing an academic career, she set aside her calculator to follow her passion for storytelling. Now she spends her day crafting tales of heroes and heroines, overcoming struggles and finding love. Captivated by romance novels ever since she discovered ever since discovering Julie Garwood's The Prize as a teen, Heather draws inspiration from everything from science fiction to rock stars. When she's not writing, she enjoys time with her loving husband, mischievous pugs, and sweet but needy guinea pigs. Welcome, Heather. Please tell us a little more about yourself and your novel, Shattered Melody.
Hi there. I'm Heather E. Andrews. I started, I've been reading since I was 12. Reading since before then, but I've been reading romance novels since I was 12 when I discovered Harlequin. I could get a Harlequin for 10 cents at the local thrift store, and it was like, ooh. And I, it's so funny because I was a rebel with it. I would rather stay home and read than go to school. I mean, I used to skip school. I wasn't out, throwing stuff on train tracks. I was hiding in my closet reading a book all day. Um, and so I knew I had a fascination with it at that point, and I'd been trying to write the first book I published. I was in the fourth grade, and it was the care and feeding of woozles is and I have pictures of it up in my Facebook group. But I find that a lot of authors, they were making books or writing in fake newspapers when they were kids, and there's just that fascination with the publication industry and having your words out there. So um that's a little bit of trivia about me. Yeah.
And Shattered Melody, your most recent
Mhm.
novel, is the third book in the Bold Melodies series.
Mhm.
Will there be more books in the series? And how are the books in the series connected?
So the Bold Melody series is set in the world of Clark Records. It's the recording industry that links all of the stories together. So there are three full length novels. There Scarred Melody, Bright Melody, and Shattered Melody. And it started out with Scarred Melody. I didn't think it was going to be anything but a standalone at that point. And then characters just keep talking to me, and they're so bossy. And so I created some others. I also have a novella in the world called Christmas Melody, which is a secret baby trope. And I have two more coming out that are planned so far. I have a short story called Ocean Melody in a I'm sorry, an anthology that's coming out next month called Rock Out Together. I'm really excited. There's a bunch of really great rock star romance authors who are taking part in that. And then November 1st, I have my next full length, which is Soulful Melodies. So that's all I have planned right now. I have been wanting to go in other directions, but we'll see where the tide is turning.
Okay. Um, when writing your books, do you draw inspiration from real people or events when you're crafting the characters or the storylines?
Um, a little bit of both. My characters tend to be a really good like it's all about what if. Like my first book was what if there was an autistic savant songwriter helping out like a washed up rock star, or what if um you know oh shoot, what if somebody went on to a reality TV show like The Voice, you know and so there are some real things like The Voice. My character is based on real people, like Adam Levine inspired one of my characters. Um, Samantha from Sex and the City was a real inspiration for my recent heroine. And oh man, she was so fun to write. But so I guess both. I mean, real life situations like that happen to me tend to be more like scenes in books, like funny things that happen. Um, One of my second book, Bright Melody, there's a scene where he's with her in an airplane on an airplane, and I hate hate flying. And last time my husband and I went somewhere, I'm sitting next to him, and turbulence is getting to me, and he says, "Heather, it's okay, it's okay. The pilot's old." And I'm like, "What does that have to do with anything?" And he says, "He's been in the war. He's seen action. This is nothing. We're going to be just fine." I mean, and what's funny is that I knew he was spoon feeding me the biggest pile of bullshit ever, but I was just like, the pilot's old. Pilot's old. He's fine. We're and of course, as we get up to leave, the person who comes out is this young woman pilot my age, and I looked at Ben and I'm like, she's been in the war, huh? And that's so like things that make me laugh like that um are in it. And so that was in my second one. And there's this character who lives, her phone number was 2 digits off from like a not a sex line, but a an escort service. And so and she would anytime somebody would call, she'd be like trying to convert them to her. She was a Baptist, trying to convert them to Jesus. It's just so funny, the things that can happen to people. Um, and that's one of the reasons why, like, my books are very dramatic. They're very emotional. I'm hoping to make somebody cry at least a little bit, but I want to make them laugh, because life is just too serious. There's too much going on in the world for us to not be happy when we read our books.
True. Have to agree. That's true. When you start writing your books, is it a plot idea, a character that comes into your head, or a specific trope that you want to try and write?
Um, that's sort of like that sort of depends. So my first one, it was about the character. Like I was like, there's this shy songwriter who falls in love with a washed up rock star. I mean, so it was characters, and it was sort of the plot. But the second one was like, I knew my character was going to be a plus size heroine, fighting, um, the music industry's body standards and stuff. But I also was like fascinated with the voice and these reality songwriting shows. So it was a bit of the situation. Um, and it's hard because like everything is so intertwined in a story. But really, when it comes down to it, it's the character. I mean, if I had to say one more than the other, it would be the journey the character is going through and how they're going to change. So, character, definitely.
So when you hear from your readers, have any of them like mentioned to you that they felt seen in your books or that you helped them through a difficult time?
Nobody has said that to me. I have had letters, people saying I kept them up all night. I made them cry. Like, I can't, that was so hilarious. Um, I have had some people say they could relate to things that were in the book. Um, you know, but any I love it when people reach out to me, even if it's to say, there was a typo on page 325, and I just thought you should know. And I'm like, like, you wrote me. I matter. It's and honestly, actually, be truthful, like it kind of takes, I don't want to say guts, but moxie, be like, hey, listen, I noticed this, you should know, and I appreciate it because these are books are like they're artistic products. They're not perfect. And because I don't have a publishing house backing me, and I don't have the limited resources to have multiple editors go through stuff. Nor do I want to spend that much time doing it. So I do like when people reach out and say like I saw something that, I really appreciate that. And I always invite those people to be part of my ARC teams because if they like the book enough to reach out to me, they're going to be willing to do it in the future. So I guess that's a plug for reaching out to your authors. So and it's my absolute favorite part is talking to my readers.
Um, so one of my questions for romance writers specifically is, what do you think is the most misunderstood thing about the romance genre?
So I've been thinking about this, and because there's two things that I come across, being, I write romance, and of course my family, they all know what I write, but most of them won't read it because they're uncomfortable knowing that I wrote. I mean, there are intimate scenes in my books, and I want all of you to know that I write romance. I don't write erotica because and I say that because the scenes are very um they're crucial for plot and character development. I'm not just throwing them in there for shits and giggles, if you allow me to swear. Um, and so I think that overshadows it for a lot of people who aren't as comfortable reading those things, especially from somebody And I think that the misconception is that it is just mind rot, or you know, this or what's really funny to me is when people say, oh, those romance books, they give readers just unrealistic expectations or portrayals of romantic relationships. And my answer to that is no shit. It's like, first of all, I don't want to read a book that's not more interesting than what's going on. And in no way would I ever want to enter into a relationship with like the president of a 1%er motorcycle club, but I want to read that book, or I really wouldn't want to be Adam Levine's girlfriend because he's kind of fit, but I'd love to read that book. The one with a woman who can change him, and um and that's exactly how I want it. People say it as if it's our obligation to present life realistically. And if like that's what Nicholas Sparks is for, women's fiction, something that's going to just gut you. And um I those that's not what I read for. I do read to have an emotional experience. I read to watch a character grow and maybe inspire me for some things, but I'm not looking for relationship advice. And I think that is a common misconception that people are looking for realistic portrayals of life in some of these books. And you know what? Maybe sometimes there are, but it's not a rule. If books are not fiction, uh, you know, um, Ursula K. Le Guin said it perfectly that an author's job is to lie and to lie well, and so that somebody will believe the lie. And that's what I do. I don't read, and I never approach another fiction book expecting something to be realistic, even if it's a historical fiction. That's especially you know like the Scottish stuff, they didn't wear plaids until the 1800s. Not like, so you see these things that are inconsistent. They're not always truth, based truth maybe. But, and I remember that like people say, oh, unrealistic expectations. You shouldn't be reading that stuff. You'll be exposed to things. You can't, but then people read horror. People read science fiction. People, I'm not reading Dan Brown books for archaeology lessons. You know what I'm saying? It's like people who work in the police, uh for the police watching NCIS, and they're like So anyway, I've gone on this a lot. I've been trying. I know I've, but it's kind of, it might be a soapbox thing for me because I do, when I'm out and about in the world talking about my books, sometimes I'm not as comfortable because of these issues, these things, though I'm not in any way ashamed of it at all. And I in fact, my last book, Shattered Melody, did some stuff, went some places I never expected it to go. A lot of romance novels have some BDSM elements, and it's not something I've ever been motivated to write. But my characters were like, "Yeah, we think that this would work," and I'm like, "Oh, you're gonna make me go there?" So, and I knew nothing. I read maybe two articles on it, and I extrapolated everything using my imagination. So I might get some emails from readers saying that wasn't accurate, in which case, and then I have a trigger warning in the front, this is here. My representation of it is not based on fact. Um, so I think I'm just going on about this, but that's also very important. Like, not my experience of the music industry is limited to high school band class. I mean, I played the flute in the marching band. That's what I got, and but it's so fun to fantasize what is this like? And of course I pick it up from a lot of other things that I read. So that's my freedom to lie. This is one of my pugs. Just want to introduce him to my readers. This is Mudgy with his gold
Oh,
collar. So
hello.
anyway,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
Cool, Jane. So you mentioned a couple of things that are coming out
Mhm.
shortly. What are you currently working on?
Well, Ocean Melody is the short story just got sent to my proofreader. Very excited about that. Um, a 2 second clip on that would be a college junior goes to spring break at Panama City, Florida, um, where all the music happens on spring break. And she meets a rock star because she accidentally finds herself crowd surfing and he rescues her from the crowd. It's very short, it's fun, it's like 30 pages, it's very short. So I recommend checking out that anthology. It's gonna be awesome. But the next full length I have is gonna be is this is something I've been wanting to write for a while. The main character, his name is Ellis Clark, and he is the founder of Clark Records. He's 55 years old, so it's an older adult. They say older adult, but you know, 55. It's a pretty average. A lot of guys are out dating at that age. She's a little bit younger, but he just got out of a divorce and there was a terrible conflict for him in the last book, Shattered Melody. He lost his wife in a car accident, and it's 10 years prior. So he's still working through that. And him learning to love again and find his soul, find his motivation for being alive, other than trying to keep, his family together. It's about him getting back to himself. And the woman he falls for is a yoga instructor who has multiple sclerosis. And so she is learning how to have hope that she can have, she's allowed to have love even though she's sick, and so there's real big conflict. He lost his first wife in an accident, falling in love and losing somebody. Oh, I can't take that risk anymore. And her being like, I can't allow myself to have feelings for you because I'm gonna become a burden to you as I progress, which there's no with, and I've been learning a lot about multiple sclerosis, and especially I think readers who have um, immunodisorders will really relate to her character because there is a lot of fear that comes with having health issues. Not that I want to make that the main theme, but being able to overcome those obstacles, be brave, choose love, you know. But it's really great. She finds out her disease is progressing, so she creates a bucket list. Guess what's at the top of that bucket list? She wants to have a one night stand with a rock star. And conveniently, he was at one point, he and his first wife were a magic duo before they founded Clark Records. And so he's like, well, I guess I can help you out there. And it's just becomes about him helping her check off everything on her bucket list and the what it does for both of them. So I mean, how fun is that? You know, I was like, if anybody who sees this has any ideas for what could be on their bucket list, her bucket list, let me know because I'm coming up with all sorts of fun things.
Okay, that
Yeah.
sounds like a good one. Wow. So you got to keep us posted on when that one comes
Oh
out.
yeah, November 1st. You can.
All right. So can you describe your writing process from idea to finished manuscript?
Well, that's it's different for every book. It feels like um, it's kind of like I'm the baby of 9 kids. My mother always used to say, I have a different relationship with every single one of my kids, but I don't love you any less. You're different, you know? But it's the same way. Like my first one was like a massive labor of love, but I was also learning how to write when I did that. Because I'm just gonna make quickly say that in the last since things became indie publishing heavy, right? It's the game has completely changed, point of view, voice, yada yada. So it's um and so I was learning how to do that. And I had ideas. I will not say I'm a plotter. I won't say I'm a pantser. I'm more like a tenter. Somebody once said like there's major scenes holding up the entire book, like poles on a tent. And so I'm just trying to get this tent to fit these goddamn holes so that I won't get wet. So I'm sorry.
Okay, I
I don't
like
even
that.
it's
I like
Oregon is a public library. I can't swear that much. But I think that's the best way to put it. And every time I start a new project, I pull out a book and try something new. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it just makes it worse. But so I think the tent analogy is the best way to describe it. So.
Okay. Um, so when crafting the books, what do you feel like of the crafting elements are your strong suit, and what would you like to improve on?
Mm. Um, I think that I'm really good at, I think I'm good at humor. I hope. um, and I think I'm good at creating memorable characters. I really struggle with plot sometimes. I work as an editor as well as an author. So you'd think I'd be really good at that. And to a certain degree, I got some punctuation all taken care of, but um I'd like to be better at my own word choice and pacing because sometimes I spend way too much time building up and then I have my climax and then it's almost over, immediately because I'm just so ready to be done by the time I got to the climax. So pacing is hard. I'd like to do better at that. I find authors who can do the pacing really well keep me engaged a lot. So yeah, I I think that's what I'd like to do better.
Um, when writing the chemistry between the characters, how do you keep it authentic?
Um, like as far as like if I have two characters interacting, and it's just in a conversation, say it's to the sisters or parents and child, and it's um I want to make sure that each volley is like an emotional reaction. I want to see the character's emotions in what I say. Um so and I cut it, I make it as clear and cut as possible. Like I will keep the fluff out as much as I can when it comes to dialogue, because there's no reason to rehash stuff. It drags down the pace. So, you know, if the sister walks in and says, "Oh my gosh, I was late for work," then the little sister, well, then maybe you should have been off your phone and not texting people when you were driving. Shut up, Jen. Just so these things are going back and forth, and it's like I'm watching it happen. And, keeping the chemistry authentic, um, is focusing on the things that will evoke the emotion as opposed to just filler, keeping the filler out. So, because you know what's funny is that in our everyday life, the filler is what's mostly there. I'm not going to have a conversation like that. I'm going to say, hey, it's good to see you. Where you been? It's going to be 5 minutes of warm up, and then the conversation, this basic conversational skills, right? But not in writing. It's very important to have it because, and I have discovered that the reason that is the reader is bringing their own knowledge to it. They're going to know that these two women are sisters, ideally. And if not, the reader will tell them, but not go over into it. They're going to know certain things, and you want to meet the reader where the reader is. At least that's what I hope to do. Um, and beta readers are great at telling me when I've been doing too much or too little in that sense.
Okay. Um, so we before we started, we kind of went down, we kind of opened the door to this. What's your favorite romance trope to write or read, and why?
Well, I love reading Beauty and the Beast tropes or reverse Beauty and the Beast tropes. I don't know what it is. The tortured beast, Beauty and the Beast is my favorite novel, Disney movie. Yeah, every girl wants to be Belle because we're all reading those romance novels. And I'm sure that's where some of the illusion of women having their heads in the clouds comes from. And to a certain extent, it's true, but that's okay. We're allowed. So I love reading Beauty and the Beast. In fact, I collect books of that trope just to have on my bookshelf. I'm like one of those. And in my first book, Scarred Melody, was a reverse Beauty and the Beast. Half of her body was covered in scars from the car accident her mother died in. And she was an autistic savant, so she had a rough go of it, but she was great. And it was about the washed up rock star helping bring her back to life, basically. Um, that was I love that book. That's a um, I did write um, the Secret Baby, and I love reading and writing Secret Baby. I don't have any children. I was talking about that before the meeting, but they're so funny. Kids are hilarious. They're like, if you want automatic comedy relief, pet or kid. And the first line in my Christmas Melody novella is Vince, please don't put the cat in the toilet. I mean, it's like I just cracked up, you know? So um when I one of my favorite things, some of my favorite things to read what kids are doing. And you were telling me that you have a son and you probably remember some ridiculous things that they did. You watch them on TikTok. Oh yeah, that look on your face says everything I need to know. And I just watch these things on TikTok about these kids saying the most just ridiculous things. So I love it for that reason. And I was saying that it is a controversial trope. And I think it's because a lot of people have feelings about mothers keeping children secret from fathers or something of that sort. And you know what? It didn't occur to me until somebody actually wrote me a letter, a review of Christmas Melody based on that, saying that she was very selfish for having kept it from him. I'm like, huh. I didn't think about that because the whole joy of them being reunited was so, you know, powerful to me. So yeah, those are just two that I think of when I think of my favorite tropes. Um, we'll see. I tried to write an enemy to lovers in Shattered Melody. Shattered Melody that just came out July 1st is a second chance, also a very deep personal favorite. Who doesn't want to think about their first love being all wonderful, And he broke her heart though. He broke her heart, and it's about him coming back in her life and needing her help. And she just, how dare you, and um, it wasn't as good of an enemies to lovers as I had hoped, but at the second chance was just wonderful. I felt like with them. So yeah.
Okay. So in your bio, you mentioned Julie Garwood's The Prize. Amazing book. I read
Mm.
it many, many years ago. Um, what drew you to write romance, and how did you know this was your genre?
Um, I think it was the fact that it was all I wanted to write, read. It was all I wanted to read. I mean, I read like I got when I was in high school and stuff. I did all the requisite reading. I did a lot of work in mythology when I was in college. I read tragedy but when it came down to it, like I was always subscribed to the Harlequin or the Harlan. No, it was the Silhouette Special Edition mailing list. That was my jam, and I always loved the romance between a man, the drama between it, and um between the will they, won't they, what happened. Oh my God, there's obstacles between them finding each other. Um, it just fed my need for drama, I guess, and I was a very dramatic teenager. um, and it gave me a bit of an outlet for expressing a lot of the things going on in my life, um and I just it was so entertaining. uh I loved that in science fiction. It was something about science fiction being I was obsessed with Star Trek, Star Wars. um and my brother, having six brothers probably had a lot to do with it. uh but but there was something about a man being vulnerable to a woman and a woman being vulnerable to a man, that having it stripped away and exposed to the reader so that they could create something bigger than the two of them independently, um and live happily ever after. It was just a nice escape from the everyday. And so I wanted to start creating that. And I always knew that that's what I really wanted to do. And even though I went into academia for a while, and because authors do to make money, and no, we don't. but it's art itself is never about making money. Painters and photographers, it's very hard to do that. That's why it's called passion and not work per se. So
True. Very true. Um, for not for this book, but for your first book, what was your publishing journey? How did you go? Did you get the call? Did you
Mm.
choose the indie route or the traditional route?
Well, when I actually first started, my very first book, which has never been published, is sitting in a drawer right over there. I wrote in 2009, and it was a science fiction romance. And I was back. This was back before. This was right when people were starting to independently publish, and RWA did not recognize independent publishing as actual publishing. Um, so when I had stopped for a while for various reasons, and right before the pandemic, I started getting interested in it again, and I went on to I went onto the Romance Writers Support League, which is a group on Facebook I recommend for anyone who's interested in writing romance because they give very good support. And I asked if there was a critique group looking for people. And because Roman RWA at the time was having a little bit of an internal shakeup, so I needed help. I couldn't, and I got involved in a critique group with about 6 other women, and some were experienced with publishing, some were not. And what we did was we did an anthology. They we put together a Christmas anthology. It's no longer in print. It was called Jingle My Snowballs, and it's actually the first version of Christmas Melody was published in that. And I got that was my first taste of publishing, self-publishing. And at that moment, I was like, there's no reason for me to do this. Not do this now. I have no reason not to publish. And I have one of the things that I don't talk about too much is that I have an immuno disease, and so my health is up and down. And it's very difficult to stay on a publishing schedule and to get it to do enough to get because getting an agent, getting an editor, getting a publisher, it can take years, 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 years. And and I'm not saying at all that it's not worth it. It's just a different world now than it was 20 years ago. And so I decided that I was going to do this. If I was going to do this, I was going to do it on my own. And if I could always change my mind later. And maybe, but and that's what I did. They helped me with my first book, critiquing, helping me put it together, and I formatted it myself on Reedsy. Reedsy has a formatter, very basic, um, and I put it up there. And it has, I, it's you learn so much about the publishing industry when you do it all that work yourself, about promoting and I recommend I honestly when people come talk to me about it, I say do at least one book by yourself so you know what goes into it. Um, but it's a lot of work. Um, and that's what happened. I got into a group, we did an anthology, I was suddenly that was my new road.
Okay. Um, so you've mentioned critique groups,
Mhm.
writers groups, uh, beta readers also, and the folks who reach out to you who
Mhm.
bring stuff to your attention, grabbing them as a beta reader. Um, what about editors? Do you have editors or what? Any of these people? What role do they play in your writing process?
Um, I work as an editor. I'm a line editor and a copy editor. I do not do proofreading because I don't like to be the last gate to, I don't want to be that responsible. But so I try my best to do as much of it myself as I can as far as line and copy editing. But I do have proofreaders. Stuff still gets through, unfortunately, because I can only um, editing is very expensive. It's worth it 100%, but it is very expensive. So I try to get as much outside help as I can. as far as ARC readers and beta readers. Beta readers are worth their weight in gold. I will, I, I love my beta readers. You know, they go through and tell me what is confusing to them. I have this terrible habit of putting Spaceballs jokes in my books. I, for some reason, think that everyone that Spaceballs is required watching for the world. Not sure why, but you know, they have to remind me, I don't understand what you mean by may the Schwartz be with you. All right, okay. So I have to pull that back or explain it if I feel like it's important. Um, and also, I use them as well for sensitivity reading. One of the things that I regret after writing Scarred Melody, my first book, was not having someone who had experience with autism read it, because my depiction of her autism was obviously not realistic, but I wanted I wanted to make sure it wasn't inappropriate or offensive. And I haven't had anybody comment on it, but just the fact that I took the risk of doing that, I wish I had somebody read that for that purpose. Um, and so the tricky part is making sure to get everything done in time for them. And ARC readers, I find they're very important, especially because things get, you know, typos get missed and all that stuff. And I had probably 2 dozen things that I missed this last go round. So they helped me out with that. Plus, they also help drum up support on Amazon and Goodreads with their reviews. I love going to blogs and having people who do blogs read my books as well, because they have a lot of experience with the genre. People, you know, it's important that no matter a lot of different kinds of readers read your book, but people who read the genre and know what to expect in the genre are going to have a whole different experience of it. So, um, you know, the critique group though is again worth their weight in gold. I'm actually between critique groups at the moment. Um, it's a lot like dating. You might get into a critique group that's the most wonderful, passionate relationship ever, but it's short lived. Or you know, go looking for somebody who's really wonderful and stable, but there's just no chemistry there. And I say that professionally as well as personally interacting with some stuff. But I have great relationships with my clients who always, you know, as an editor editee relationship, they always let me bounce ideas off them and stuff. So that's good.
So what advice would you give on new writer that's just starting out?
Definitely join a group. Uh, I I'm the secretary of the New Jersey Romance Writers, which is where the Wayne Public Library is not affiliated with it, but we have a working relationship, and they are. When I live in Albany, New York, so I'm not in New Jersey per se, but the reason I joined New Jersey is because um, they had before COVID had the premier romance writers conventions on the East Coast, in my opinion, you know. So people would come and like all these authors that I would read were there. And that was back in the day when we would spend New Jersey romance writers, when we would spend a whole weekend immersing ourselves and becoming and having a book signing. And I met Eloisa James, Sherilyn Kenyon, Julia Quinn before everything. Yeah, I mean, just it was
No,
just
I was a member of the New Jersey Romance Writers at that same time, and I ran the Golden Heart 1 year.
oh, nice.
Yes, things that I don't always say about,
Mhm.
but no, I Julia Quinn. I remember she had one of her children, and I saw her in the lobby uh, of the hotel. So yeah, no, Sherilyn Kenyon is one of my favorite authors. So.
Yeah, and oh my gosh, when Sherilyn Kenyon came to speak, like you know, she would just break my heart. She was talking about her mother then when her mother died and stuff, and it was just so like you got to know these writers on a personal level as
Mhm.
well as a professional level. And so when I came back after COVID started, when I came back, everything was digital. I was like, well, I have to join NJRW because that's the one. I mean, not even New York City was on my radar. It was NJRW. And of course, I had no idea about what had happened with the national and everything like that. But so I stick with them. So get involved with one of those groups, one or two. Develop a group of a squad of writers that will reach out to you and connect with you, because it's a very isolating career. And you want to know, and you need to know what's going on in the publishing industry. So you want to talk to other people about what's going on. It's what I actually sponsor a group called Fan the Flames. You can find them on Facebook, but every 2 weeks we get together on a Tuesday night and just talk shop. Because it's, you want to be able to talk about your creative experience with other people. And the hard part is that it's not just a creative experience, is that it is a business. This is a business, and a lot of people are in it to have a career. I mean, and I absolutely want to have a career in this, but I won't sacrifice my artistic proclivities for the business aspect of it. But it is first and foremost the consumption of this it's a creative product, and so that part of it is also something we have to work together and talking about, and know, especially with things changing with AI, with publishing rights, with what's that called? Not plagiarism, but when people pirating, um, and we need to be able to talk about what's going on. I wouldn't know half of what I know about editing and about the business if it weren't for other people. And there's so much more I want to know that I'm only going to learn if I reach out and talk to other people.
Okay. So I have one final question for you, Heather. I try to end on like a more fun note. So if you could have dinner with one of your characters, who would it be and why?
Other than the really good looking heroes that I have, I just gotta say, Shattered Melody, the last book I wrote, had my heroine, her name is Amelia Clark. And she is a man eater. She is just, I have more experience. I write sassy heroines, I do, but she is just over the top. A lot of people ask me, like, who does she remind you of? Samantha from Sex and the City is the closest I can come up with, because she just walks into, she walks into a room and it's just like, you're all just here for my entertainment, but she's so wounded. She's so wounded, but I would love to sit and just watch her talk, like people watch with her. And with her signature stiletto cocktail, and picking apart people and saying funny things. She's just she's the best friend I wish I could have and go out in public with and be like and do crazy things with. So I would love to meet her and to see what kind of shenanigans she's getting herself into now. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Heather, for joining us this afternoon, and wish you all the best of luck with Shattered Melody and your novella and your forthcoming book that you explained kind of the
Soulful Melody.
55-year-olds. What was the title again?
It's going to be Soulful Melody, SOUL, if you will. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So again, we wish you all the best. And please keep us posted on the release of those 2 forthcoming books.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.